Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be a little relaxed today because I need a little red light therapy. So excuse my lighting and my relaxed atmosphere. Anyway, does this work? Yes, it's true. It does. Not only does it help physically, mentally, emotionally, can help you with the creation of dopamine and serotonin. So, that being said, it's winter. I mean, when you have depression, does it really matter? Because you still have depression. Doesn't matter if it's summer, winter, spring, or fall. Personally, I think it's worse in the transitional seasons than it is in the actual meat seasons. I would consider a meat season winter, actually. I wouldn't say it's any different for me in the winter than it is in the summer, which is unfortunate because that's unfortunate. You still have the waves, you still have good days, you still have bad days. With the winter, you just get a extra thing to battle, which is the lack of sunlight, because I live in a valley where the clouds settle all the time. So we could go days, weeks even, without seeing sun. Yeah. So awarenesses that I have gained since my last post. A lot, man. A freaking lot. Something that I've recognized that came up for me recently was not passing down the pain. Now, when we think of that, we always think of like childhood, right? And like the parents being the breakers of that cycle. The parents need to not pass down their pain, their generational trauma, right? But I had an interesting moment happen yesterday when I was explaining myself to my now fiance, by the way. Yes. So I was explaining this to him yesterday while I was having a spiral over a surface level situation, and I felt like I wasn't being understood. Now, when I keep hitting a wall of being misunderstood, I get to a point where I want to give up. And it doesn't look like giving up and walking to another room, which would be nice. Instead, it's like giving up with the DBT skills, the dialectical skills, with the nicety, like trying to create a healthy conversation, which is my goal. But this is how I know when things are linked to something deeper, an open wound that's still open and maybe even a little infected now, because me giving up in that scenario, you get to a point and all of a sudden you want to rub people's face in the dirt of your pain. They weren't there for it. They didn't experience it with you. You went through this alone. You met them in your healing era. They only know you as this soft, gentle person, this peace-filled person. And that's the goal, to retrain oneself into a new frequency. But when I feel exhausted for understanding, that will be what my old mode of operation would be. I would be, oh yeah, you want to sit there and just misunderstand me? You want to choose to not understand the depths of where I'm coming from? Let me release the kraken of my depths all over you, and now you feel pressured almost and in a corner, kind of backed into a corner about doing it my way. No longer a compromise, but more just like, I'm done with the conversation, shutting you down because my pain's more valid than yours, which isn't true. It's a defense mechanism used when we start to get close to a eureka moment. So if you can find it in yourself to ground through that process, even explain as you're freaking out, I'm freaking out, and I'm freaking out about something that has nothing to do with you. But the surface level of you not understanding this surface situation is making me feel like I'm going crazy from all these years of unanswered or unseen or unvalidated things, right? And if you can explain that as it's happening, it helps you to break that cycle of hurting others because you're hurt. Now, yeah, I know it's your own story you're hurting people with, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's painful for others. You went through it because you were biologically designed to go through it. They weren't. They met you at this stage of your life, the healing stage, for exactly that, for this new ushered era. Now, does that mean we can't express or share our stories? No, we totally can. I'm not saying we forget. No, you integrate these things into your life. And they do come out in the way that you set boundaries and the expectations you have with the relationships of people in your life. However, what we cannot do is use that pain to shut down a situation or to win an argument or to get your way. Just because you're reaching an impasse of frustration due to your own past trauma, your own pain, that doesn't mean that that's the time. It might feel like the righteous thing to do, but it's not the time. Because not only are you now passing that pain to others who care about you, you also are now reliving that pain and that trauma as if it just happened. So when your brain starts to sense yourself going into that road, going into that route and that avenue, it's very important to take breaths, breathe. You might be shaking, you might be yelling, screaming, crying, whatever, but you need to breathe and feel your energy literally coming through your mouth, into your lungs, and down into your feet. And you keep doing that until you reach a semblance of calm, mind, body, and spirit. And then you may proceed. Just because you are feeling like you're grasping at the edge of a cliff doesn't mean that the last straw to help you is more pain. It's not going to help. All it does is create a cycle of pain and cycle of hurt. And you're setting an expectation and a standard of what you're going to expect in your future discussions or disagreements or something like that with others. Because now that's your mode of operation. And now you're scary to deal with. So, right, living life as a traumatized person with PTSD is very hard because we do live by different semblance of rules, because we have to be aware of everything. We have to be aware of how our actions affect us, how our actions affect others, how our thoughts affect us, how our thoughts affect others, just so many things, because we're now wired differently. And I learned this in a group therapy outpatient program, and the first thing they told you is, you're not right. That doesn't mean that what happened to you is not valid and it didn't hurt. Yeah, it did. Hell yeah. But the way you see the world now is incorrect. You are now seeing it through a lens and a filter, a fight or flight, to protect yourself from having what happened before happen again. So when it comes into the later stages of the healing journey, what that looks like is a surface level thing of like, okay, for example, don't roll your eyes at me kind of thing. And like, that's easy, right? Like, yeah, don't do that, dude. It's disrespectful, like blah. But for some reason, that's not as deep as it goes with when you have PTSD. The trauma is all the way down here. And it's like, you rolling your eyes also means to me unsafe. Because if I'm being disrespected now with an eye roll, what's to stop what happened to me in my past, which might be physical pain and trauma, sexual pain and trauma, things of that nature? What's stopping that from now seeping into my present? Which sucks, because we recognize logically that where we are now in these later stages of healing does usher in better relationships, people who are able to see us and support us in the way that we need. So we cannot treat them and their surface level altercation as that feeling like I am now unsafe. You need to recognize what's happening, recognize that feeling of unsafe, recognize that you're going down that road and need to place a pause in that conversation and bring this now up. This is what's the most important thing right now. You rolling your eyes makes me feel unsafe. Why does it make me feel unsafe? Because in my past, when I've been dismissed over something that matters to me, it turned into a deep disrespect for who I am. And over time, that person would come back at me to punish me in some type of way. So if I sense a semblance of disrespect in this conversation, what's to say you don't become that same abuser, which I know is wrong logically, consciously, healing wise, but my nervous system is putting you now in that boat. And the way that I fight and flight, well, I don't really flight, I mostly fight. So the way I respond to feeling unsafe is to fight. And when you explain that to somebody, when you take the time to express that to somebody, it doesn't just help them better understand you. It helps you better understand you. And you better understand and recognize why you're breathing like this all the time and everything seems fine. Because you're waiting for these landmines to step on. And every time you step on one, it's up to you to, what's that word? Deactivate it. Deactivate the mind, whatever. So through that deactivation process, it brings a lot of awareness and realizations about self to the surface. And then you're able to create a proactive plan of how you need to move going forward. And if that means asking for more mindfulness from your partner or your relationships, or recognizing when it's starting to happen again, we bring it up later, have a different conversation, whatever it is. Or maybe the fact that there's even disrespect happening in the conversation is because you have a lack of connection, a lack of intimacy, a lack of whatever, maybe special time, maybe, and you need to then nurture those relationships more, because then they become closer to you. And once they're closer to you, people are more apt to understand you, the closer that they're able to get to you. So I was just having that awareness. Then you place proactive things in place. You set boundaries where needed to be set, but also you need to recognize your own need for compromise because you are an injured person. And it's not fair to walk around the rest of your life expecting others to cater to that. You need to heal. If people keep catering to that and not addressing or not challenging you on those wounds, that's how they stay open. And when a wound is open, it's so easily infected. And then that's very much psychosis. That's feelings of crazy, the spiraling, crashing out, all of those situations. So it is important to get triggered, but to be aware of self inside of that trigger is where you hold your power. To recognize that this doesn't really match what's happening in the present moment, my reaction to it. So that must mean that there's a deeper layer. There's a wound I've left open, and now it's gotten infected. And it's coming out, and it's oozing, and it's pussing, and it's disgusting, and I can't see through the pus and the ooze to what's truth and what's fact. So personally, that has been my mode of operation in the later stages of healing when I feel triggered. When I feel triggered, we don't suppress, we also don't embody the trigger. We are not the gun. Do not become this harmful tool just because you've been harmed. I know it's easy. Trust me, I know it's easy to protect yourself, but the next day, after you say all those things and after you put that person in that corner to make yourself feel safe, you don't feel good. So that's how I know it's not the right mode of operation. So there's this new grace that is in the later stages of healing. In the beginning and in the middle, it's not really recommended to have relationships with people and not express these things. Like, you have to. It's like pushed on you, because when you freak out over something that is very normal for another person, you need to be able to explain that to yourself and to the other person to gain that footing of reality and what is truth. The later stages of healing is a lot different, because we tend to forget about those pains. We forget about those wounds. Everything is doing better. We're finding our semblance of peace, yet things are still coming up for being addressed. So we have to recognize, oh, wow, I'm actually triggered right now. And there's a different you that kind of enters the chat when you're triggered, rather than like just being mad. I've noticed this in myself, because I lose control to really kind of watch the volume of my voice and like crying. When I'm just like kind of loudly talking and I'm yelling, but I'm not really like yelling angrily, I'm just like telling a story in yell form, that I've been triggered. I'm triggered and I'm in it and I'm fighting. But this new avenue of being triggered, it doesn't look like it did before. The before was very chaotic. It was very obvious. It was, wow, you're triggered right now. Now it's like subtle. It's secretive. Like, you don't know. So you have to really be aware and really break those things down and become conscious of this new way of being triggered. And then if it keeps going further and there is no compromise found, you'll feel yourself then go back into old triggering responses where you just want to like break stuff, right? So these are the things to become aware of when you're creating new relationships in the later stages of your healing journey, because you got to remember now, nobody knows that shit that you went through. Nobody was there. All these new people that you're ushering into your life via the law of attraction, because you're changing your home frequency, these are good people. They're good for you. They're meant for you. So it's up to you to decipher what is past and what is present. You can still gain the healing and validation you need from these people that come into your life now, even though they've never experienced that, but you need to do it in a different way. You need to learn how to do this in a more compassionate, empathetic way. It's not always about us, the victims with wounds. Everybody's been a victim at some point or another in their lives. Everyone's been taken advantage of at some point or another in their lives. So it's up to all of us to cultivate this understanding, compassion, and empathy where everybody walks away satisfied. So that's what I mean by passing on the pain. I'm not now passing on the pain to these new relationships. They can understand I've been through hard things. They can hear the stories when I need validation and venting, sure. But they don't need the fight or flight that comes up in my nervous system when something they have done or something that we have talked about or a discussion we're having touches on a deeper wound. It's not their fault. And you will ruin these cultivated relationships of positivity and growth if every time you get triggered in this later stage of healing, you go right back to treating them like you're abusers. And that is where we need to stop passing on the pain. Hurt people, but healed people or healing people heal people. So it's up to us to have this almost this responsibility of awareness to lead by example how we want to see the change in the world, you know? And so it's more than just yelling at your kids and passing on generational trauma. You can pass on pain and trauma to your peers, to your relationships, to your friends, to your bosses, to your any situation. And it can just dismantle and crumble a lot of the legwork you've done to get this far into your healing journey. And you feel like you step back 5 to 10 steps and now you got to rebuild. And it's exhausting. It's a lot easier. Well, I wouldn't say easier, but it's a lot more beneficial to recognize what I'm talking about in the moment that it's happening and recognize that you have a lot coming up for that surface eye roll. That has nothing to do with that. People are allowed to be human beings and express stuff. For some reason, I believe that they should all be as mindful as me, but they don't have what I have. I need to be mindful. I need to be aware. And then I need to implement the boundaries and compassion and compromise that we both will need to continue growing the relationship we have together, friendship, partner, whatever. And it's hard when I say things like this, because I can almost hear the rebuttal of old me, right? Like I can hear old me saying to me, what about me though? What about me? What about my pain? And my response to that is, what about it? You need to hurt somebody to validate your pain? Or to win this argument of the validation of pain and victim mentality? You're stripping yourself of your own empowerment, of how far you've come, you know? And it's allowed to have a compromise that says, like, based off of what I've gone through, I would appreciate if you and I could reach an understanding of no eye rolling, right? Or if it does happen, we stop, we take a break, we apologize, we move forward. Because that's the key to come with that compromise, you know, to be like, you know, you're right and valid for rolling your eyes. You're allowed to be annoyed. You're a freaking human being with human being experiences, and we're all living on this earth for the first time right now. You're allowed to have feelings. However, I personally need verbal communication, because when my mind leaves open pages of a narrative for me to write in based off of your eye roll, you're going to be written in as a freaking demon, because that eye roll reminds me of years of past pain. So don't let me write the narrative for you. If you're annoyed, say you're annoyed. Say you need a break from the conversation. Say you don't get it, but like you'll try to, or maybe you just need a break. You just need to just walk away and maybe like come back to it at a later date, whatever the situation may be. And that would be the compromise. The validation to that other person that they're allowed to be annoyed. They're allowed to have feelings. They're allowed to be a human being. But what I need is that recognition of mindfulness. And you know what? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if people need to be more mindful around you and how they act inside of relationships. You're actually helping the future of society by teaching people dialectical behavior skills and other conversational and problem-solving skills. So this is a good thing. And don't ever think like, oh, I'm too hard to love, or I'm not worth being around of a person because there's all these rules and chalant that has to come with it. I like to say I wish I was nonchalant, but I'm not, because I have these things. I have these compromises. I have these weird rules for now, because I'm healing certain wounds, right? And they do get less and less as the healing journey progresses. So you do need to trust in that. And that every time you rip open that wound and pull out the pus and rub it in somebody's face, you're actually taking steps backwards in your growth and your healing journey. And you're disassembling and dismantling the piece that you've been cultivating for however long to be in this further stage of healing. So it's like you're not valid. You're valid. You're allowed. You're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed. You're allowed. Your pain is valid. It doesn't mean your pain isn't valid. And that's the affirmation I say to myself when I start to feel like I'm losing it. My pain is valid. My pain is not invalidated by your lack of understanding, because you weren't there. You'll never understand. You won't get it. But can we compromise and meet in the middle, where we recognize that we need a common ground to stand on here because of that pain? And why is that bad? That's not. You're not hard to love. You deserve love. We love almost the best because we know what it feels like to be so unloved, right? So we matter. We're important. We have things. We create, we love, we share, we have music. Like, you know, we're not invalid just human beings because we struggle with reality based off of our PTSD. You're not unimportant. You are just as valid and important and valuable of a human being as anybody else. And when we start to think like that, the adverse to that, to start to think that we're broken, we're not worth it, we don't have value, you start to isolate. And when you isolate, you lose lack of purpose, you don't fulfill your larger, higher spiritual purpose here on this planet. Like, you just start disconnecting from everything. Now, that concept reminds me of phytoplankton. So when phytoplankton are in a pond, their purpose is to absorb photosynthesis and, do photosynthesis things and bring green and life and whatnot to the pond. But there will be a time where sometimes they will over cultivate and they're taking on too much photosynthesis and they're ruining the balance of the pond, right? Or they're trying to balance it back out, and they end up calcifying themselves so that less light reaches and the photosynthesis kind of slows down. But the more they calcify, they tend to over calcify, and then the phytoplankton sinks to the bottom of the pond and no longer has that connection to the light, and now it's not doing its job for the pond at all. There's a balance. There is a balance between being purposeful and valuable and also protecting yourself. There's a balance between those things. You wanted to have a little protection, sure. That's awareness. That's awareness is that protection. But then after the awareness, then you need to cultivate a plan. How do you now balance in this world where you could still be connected to the light, your higher spiritual purpose, light energy, like photosynthesis, and just like photosynthesis, your spiritual gift and your purpose is not going to be really known to you. It only gets known to you based off of you seeing it happening around you, the echo effect of your being, and then you see the things around you change, or the people around you, or the things being affected, and you start to be like, oh shit, I didn't realize I was doing that. And maybe you'll never notice, you'll never know, but you need to hold on to that knowing, even if you can't see it, or if you can't understand it, or you don't know what that purpose is, and you need to still balance alongside the light. You need to still balance self-preservation, energy protection, and self-growth and healing with letting in the light, man. Letting in living and joy and newness and growth and just that connection to light energy, which is God, that higher power. So it's important to find that balance. Don't become the calcified phytoplankton. Balance yourself. What you went through did teach you how to move now in this life, but healthily. Do it healthily. Don't overcalcify. Do not isolate. Do not shut yourself out from people. Balance that lifestyle appropriately. You are an entire universe, and every part of you is valid, valuable, and worthy. All right. That was my half-hour red light. I'm going to do another half hour, maybe read a little. But that's the thing, you guys. We need to balance. It doesn't matter what you think. It's about what is and what we deserve as human beings, like that phytoplankton. It's our job. So just because you went through something hard, and relationships and interpersonal relationships are incredibly difficult, that doesn't mean they're not meant for you. To balance, to figure out, to grow with. And you can. All right, guys, have a great day. You are loved, you are valued, and you are worthy.